I caught myself staring in the hospital bathroom mirror, adjusting my pale blue scrubs for what felt like the millionth time that morning. My reflection didn't lie. I was beat. Dark circles under my eyes, shoulders kinda slumped. I was trying my best to hide it, but it was there. But even with the exhaustion staring back at me, there was this grit, this determination that just wouldn't quit. I'd pulled another double shift, another sleepless night. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It was all for Lily, my little sister, and her dreams. At 30, I'd gotten pretty good at slapping on a smile and hiding how tired I really was. I quickly twisted my dark brown hair into a tight bun, making sure it was perfect for Memorial City Hospital's rules. Then took a deep breath. The fact I lived in a cramped apartment in the rundown part of town and drove a beat-up, 12-year-old sedan pretty much told the whole story. I'd given up a lot for responsibility. Being a nurse wasn't just a job. It was something I felt like I was born to do. Growing up in a blue-collar family taught me how to be tough and how to care about others. Lessons I carry with me every single day. As I headed into the morning briefing, the usual stuff was announced. You know, who's where, when they're going, the general chaos of a busy hospital. But things got real when Dr. Allison Harper, the head nurse, mentioned a new patient. "We've been assigned Lucas Bennett," she said, and I could hear a mix of excitement and doubt in her voice. Yeah, the Lucas Bennett. He was admitted last night after a skiing accident. Temporary paralysis. Needs around-the-clock care. Any takers? The room went silent. Everyone knew Lucas, the tech guy, always on magazine covers. I heard a bunch of whispers, filled with both awe and maybe a little jealousy. I hesitated for a sec. Taking this case would mean everyone would be watching me, more pressure than I usually deal with. But it also meant extra cash, and Lord knows I could use that. "I'll do it," I said kinda quietly. Dr. Harper raised an eyebrow at me. "Interesting choice, Emma. I'm sure Mr. Bennett is used to the best of the best." I straightened up my shoulders. "Care isn't about who you are, it's about treating people with respect," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt, with all those eyes on me. So, I walked into room 403, where Lucas Bennett was getting settled. The morning light was streaming in, making patterns on the stark white walls. The room was loaded with fancy medical equipment, each piece probably worth more than I make in a year. Lucas was laying still on the bed. His body looked muscular and strong, but he was wearing a loose hospital gown that didn't quite fit. He had a strong jaw, covered in stubble. I was surprised. He didn't look like the tech CEO I had imagined. I expected soft, delicate hands. You know, the kind that tap away at keyboards all day. Instead, his hands were rough, with calluses, like he'd done some real work in his life. "Mr. Bennett?" I said, walking over to check his vitals. "I'm Emma Carter, your primary nurse." Lucas slowly opened his eyes. They were piercing blue, and they seemed to see right through me, even with the medication he was on. "Call me Lucas," he said, his voice a little raspy and unsure, like he wasn't used to showing any weakness. "Looks like I'll need your help with everything." I noticed I saw this flash of shame in his eyes, real quick, but it was there. Like a guy who was always calling the shots now had to rely on someone else. I softened my voice, trying to be professional, but also letting a little bit of kindness slip through. "That's what I'm here for, Lucas," I said, trying to sound confident. "You'll be back on your feet before you know it." Right then, someone knocked. It was Ben, the orderly, swaggering in with this stupid grin on his face. "Heard you volunteered for the special assignment with the Millionaire," he said, sneering. "Trying to climb the ladder with some extra special care. Huh?" I saw Lucas's jaw tighten up, but I kept my face straight. "I'm just here to do my job," I said, ignoring him and going back to checking Lucas's vitals. Ben finally left, but I could still feel Lucas's frustration. "I can ask for another nurse, you know," he said quietly. I looked him right in the eye. "Lucas, I've been doing this for over 10 years. I've taken care of people when they were at their lowest. There's nothing common about treating someone with dignity." I paused. "Now how about we talk about what the doctor planned for your recovery?" Something shifted in his face. Maybe surprise, maybe he was starting to get it. What neither of us knew was that this was the moment that was going to change everything for both of us. The first 3 days of looking after Lucas Bennett went by in a blur. I always showed up early, checking his charts and getting everything ready before the rest of the team showed up. It gave him some privacy, which I knew he appreciated, especially since he was still getting used to not being able to do everything himself. Even though Lucas was slowly accepting his situation, he'd still get frustrated sometimes, and it'd come out in these kind of sharp remarks. "A creative genius who can't even pour his own glass of water," he said one afternoon, sounding pretty bitter. I stayed calm, checking his vitals. "Your body's healing," I told him. Sometimes being patient is its own kind of strength. Outside his room, the rumors were still flying around. "Bet she's trying to snag herself a millionaire husband," I heard Ben joking during a break, and some of the others laughed. Dr. Harper was nearby, smirking a little, but she didn't say anything. Lucas wasn't deaf. He could hear what people were saying. One morning, when I walked in with his meds, he hesitated, then asked, "What are they saying about you out there?" I could hear the guilt in his voice. I paused and put the tray down. "What they say doesn't matter," I told him. "What matters is that I know why I'm here." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the hard edge in his blue eyes start to soften. He was starting to realize I wasn't just a nurse. I was also someone who knew what I wanted and wasn't going to let anyone push me around. One night, when most of the staff had gone home, I was helping Lucas with his physical therapy exercises. The warm lighting in the room made it feel a little more personal. Lucas broke the silence, his voice quieter than usual. "Did you always want to be a nurse?" I stopped for a second, adjusting his leg before answering. "Not at first," I admitted. "I grew up in a family that always struggled with money. I saw people I loved not getting the care they deserved because they couldn't afford it. It just kind of changed how I looked at the whole world." Lucas thought about that for a second. "Yeah, I get that," he said. "Before I started my company, I was just a broke college student, buried in debt, working out of this beat-up garage. People only see the success. They don't see me sleeping on the cold floor those nights." I was surprised, so I sat down next to him. "I thought you were someone who never had to worry about money." He looked at me, a little curious, a little respectful. "And I thought you were someone who never let fear stop them." We both laughed a little. It was a real connection, you know? Not just nurse and patient, but two people who had some scars and believed that tough times could make you stronger. "Thanks," Lucas said, sounding honest. "For what?" I asked. "For not just seeing me as some helpless, rich patient." Lucas started making some serious progress. Little movements in his legs became real movements, with me helping him. But the gossip at the hospital didn't stop. One morning, while I was making Lucas's breakfast, I heard Ben and some other people laughing right outside the door. "She's definitely trying to land a marriage contract now," Ben said, loud enough for me to hear. I just froze for a second. It stung. When I walked into Lucas's room, he could tell something was wrong. "They're saying stuff again, aren't they?" he asked, getting a little angry. I shook my head. "It doesn't matter. I'm just here to do my job." Lucas looked at me for a long time. "No one should be treated like this," he finally said. "Especially not someone who spends her time helping others. I'm not going to let it keep happening." The next morning, during the big hospital meeting, Lucas showed up in his wheelchair. Even sitting down, he had this way about him that made everyone pay attention. The room went silent when he cleared his throat, looking around at everyone. "I've got something to say," he started, his voice strong. He looked at Dr. Harper, then back at everyone else. "I've heard all the whispers, all the rumors. And I've seen how you've been treating Emma. She's one of the most dedicated and skilled nurses I've ever met. Without her, I wouldn't even be here today." He wasn't messing around. You could feel the tension in the room. "Without her, I wouldn't have made the progress I have," Lucas said. "And if this is how you treat your best people, I'm going to have to think twice about working with this hospital in the future." I was standing in the back, trying not to cry. Lucas's words weren't just defending me. They were telling everyone I was worth something. After the meeting, when we were alone, Lucas smiled. "Thanks for trusting me," he said. I smiled back, my voice soft but full of feeling. "And thank you for believing in me." A few weeks later, Lucas was doing great. He could stand with just a little bit of help, and had even started taking some small steps on his own in the therapy room. Every time he got a little better, I could feel the pride swell up in me, and I'm sure it showed in my smile. One evening, Lucas asked me if I'd walk with him in the hospital garden, this quiet little place he'd started going to during his recovery. I said yes, pushing his wheelchair along the path. We got to a bench, and he turned to me, his voice sounding more serious than usual. "Emma," he started, "you've done more for me than anyone else. Not just for my body, but for my spirit." I stopped the wheelchair and sat down next to him. "You did most of it yourself, Lucas. I was just there to help." He shook his head, his eyes full of emotion. "No, you're the only person who saw me. Not just as a patient or a rich guy, but just me." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He opened it, and there was this simple but beautiful ring. "I don't just want to thank you, Emma," Lucas said, his voice shaking a little as he reached for my hand. "You've shown me a strength I didn't even know I had, a kindness that's changed me. You were there for me at my worst, and I can't imagine going through life without you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, sharing everything, good and bad. Will you marry me?" I just froze, staring at Lucas for what felt like forever. Then, my face just lit up and my eyes started shining. "Yes," I said, my voice all shaky. Lucas stood up, taking a step toward me on his own, and pulled me in for a hug. Our wedding wasn't just about being happy. It was proof that something strong can come out of tough times. The small hospital garden that had been Lucas's escape when he was having a hard time was now full of flowers and sunlight. There were rows of chairs filled with our friends and family, and some of the people from the hospital. I walked down the aisle in this amazing white dress, and I felt beautiful. Lucas was standing there, waiting for me, looking healthy and strong. He was smiling, and I could see how proud he was. "I used to think I had it all," Lucas said when we said our vows. "But you showed me that life only really matters when you have someone to share it with." I smiled back, my voice trembling. "I thought I was just a nurse doing a job behind the scenes. But you showed me that even the little things I do can make a big difference in someone's life." Everyone clapped, laughed, and cried during the ceremony. It wasn't just the start of our new life. It was like saying that even when things are hard, something good can come out of it. A few weeks later, I started working on the healthcare tech project Lucas started, helping to make the rules about how to treat patients. We were partners in everything, building a system where people would be treated with kindness and respect. Sitting in my new office, her wedding ring catching the light, I smiled, thinking about everything that got me here. All those whispers and tough times at the hospital seemed like a lifetime ago. Now, I was looking at a great future with the man I loved. After the wedding, Lucas and I dove right into building the Dignity system, working like crazy. The program we designed didn't just track how people were healing physically, but also how they were doing mentally and emotionally. I used everything I learned as a nurse, even the smallest things from my day-to-day routine. The little things, a smile, a kind word, a gentle touch, they don't just help patients get better, I explained during a big healthcare conference. They help them feel like they matter. Lucas, back to being CEO, always talked about how much I helped. He'd tell everyone the story of how I took care of him when he was at his lowest, and people would always get emotional. Even though we were busy with work, Lucas and I always made time for the little things that made us happy. One night, after a crazy day at work, we were sitting at our kitchen table, laughing about the first time we met. "Did you ever think things would end up like this?" I asked, my eyes all lit up. "No way," Lucas said, grabbing my hand. "But I knew the minute you walked into that hospital room, my life would never be the same." I smiled. I hadn't just found love. I'd helped build something that would change lives for people all over the world. Years after the Dignity system was being used everywhere, Lucas and I got some amazing news. I was pregnant, and then we found out it was twins, a boy and a girl. Lucas, who was used to running big companies, was suddenly reading all the parenting books and getting ready to be a dad. One morning in the spring, I gave birth to 2 healthy babies at the same hospital where Lucas and I had met. Lucas held my hand so tight when we saw our kids for the first time. Ethan had Lucas's blue eyes, and Lily had my smile. "We made something amazing," Lucas whispered, holding Ethan close to his chest. He looked at me, rocking Lily, and kissed Ethan's head. "I never thought I'd be here, sharing this with you." I smiled, watching Lucas with our son while I held Lily. "It's not just amazing," I said, "it's just the beginning." A few weeks later, when we were settling into life with the babies, I got a letter from the United Nations. They wanted to honor the dignity system. I can rewrite that final sentence if you want. Just let me know. It was a great story. I enjoyed working with you on it. They wanted to honor the dignity system as a global innovation and invited me to speak at the General Assembly. As Lucas gently rocked Ethan to sleep in his arms, he chuckled softly. "I think our kids are going to be pretty proud of what their folks have done." I nodded, all full of happiness and hope. And I think we've not only made things better for patients, but we've also made the world a better place for our kids to grow up in. And with that, our little family took its first steps into a whole new chapter, not just as leaders in healthcare, but as parents to two amazing twins, starting a future overflowing with love and kindness.